Looking at the Markets with David Modell.
Welcome to Looking at the Markets with David Modell. Today my very special guest is Mr. Dan Kriznic. Mr. Kriznic is the chairman, CEO, founder, and director of Invictus MD. The website for Invictus MD is invictus-md.com, invictus-md.com. So, Mr. Kriznic, welcome to Looking at the Markets.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, David.
It's a pleasure to have you on the program. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about marijuana and specifically in Canada. So currently, medicinal use of marijuana is in fact legal in Canada. When will recreational use be legalized?
So the Canadian government has come out with a statement they're going to be legalizing for recreational purposes by mid of next year. So by July of 2018, the federal government under the Health Canada regime have indicated that each province will be federally and provincially fully legal for recreational purposes, and each province is going to be responsible for coming up with their own regulatory system. Right now, the Canadian government has come up with a $1 per gram excise tax. It'll be legitimized once this actually goes legal, and the provinces will be splitting that with the government. So full throttle as we've seen it within the Canadian government, that we will be the first G7 country to be legalizing recreationally by mid of next year, 2018.
Gotcha. So how would you assess the current state of public acceptance of marijuana use in Canada?
Yeah, so I've been in the industry now since 2014 when I incubated Invictus. I've seen quite a change in terms of the demographics of who's actually accepting the use of medicinal and now coming into recreational. A lot of the conception out there is that there's a potential of misuse and a lot of the young kids using it. So definitely the government is trying to stay away from that, putting the age limit above 18, etc. There's also, when you look at kind of the use by different types of class of demographics, millennials or baby boomers, you find that the millennials are accepting of it. It's not something that they've had a significant issue with in the past in terms of if we look at the demographic that they've kind of gone through in their systems compared to the baby boomers. A lot of the baby boomers have obviously gone through the political side of it. It's been illegal for decades. It's something that we're finding even baby boomers have transitioned to more of an acceptance approach. In Canada, we're finding it very much accepted by all demographics. So definitely we don't see this changing. This is now no longer a movement. This is a reality. This is coming into the markets very quickly. And I keep saying that the years in cannabis, if you look at 1 year in cannabis, it's almost like 10 years in the real world, because things are changing so quickly, and the acceptance and the case behind the acceptance is becoming far more prolific and far more acceptable in the communities.
Right. Now, what is your particular reason for going into this industry?
So in 2014 when I incubated Invictus, I really saw it as an opportunity from the medicinal side at first. I watched a program which many people have seen with Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who basically was following the story of a young girl called Charlotte. She was having severe epileptic seizures, and the parents of Charlotte were looking for any kind of cure, anything that could help their poor child out. And when I saw what part of the cannabinoid profile, which was CBD, cannabidiol, was doing for this child, I really fell in love with the industry in a sense that this is something that can really help people. This is something that hasn't been researched enough over the decades that has been, I believe, as a result of political issues, has been criminalized, etc. And something that I really wanted to get behind. I left a very corporate paying job. This was something that a lot of people thought I was kind of crazy to get into. But I really saw this as not only a benefit where I can take a company public like Invictus and make a good return for my shareholders, which I have done extremely well over the past, but also just from the societal impact that cannabis has with individuals like Charlotte, which she was taking this CBD, which is a component of the cannabinoid profile that actually isn't psychoactive. So it doesn't have this high, this THC psychoactive effect. and it was helping her reduce seizures from 100 seizures a day to some instances where she had no seizures a day. So having something like that was one of the kind of turning points for me to get into the space, having two daughters of my own and a son. And if any of that stuff was ever an issue with them, I would do whatever I could do to help them out. And this is something that Charlotte's parents took onto themselves. And there's more and more stories like that. There's some really heartfelt stories of how it's helping people, and I wanted to be a part of that movement.
Right. Now, could you explain the various assets that Invictus owns?
Yeah, so currently Invictus, if we go from kind of British Columbia all the way into Ontario, in British Columbia, we own a fertilizer company called Future Harvest. That company has been in existence for about 20 years. We own 82.5% of that fertilizer business. That fertilizer business is generating a positive cash flow at the moment. In terms of where we're going with the fertilizer, it's pretty much sold around North America, lawn and garden, hydroponics, shops, etc. It's some unique properties behind it is that it's got very low heavy metals. So from the perspective of cultivation, it's something that growers will have to implement. They cannot pass certain laws in terms of actually selling product if the heavy metal content is too high. And then another asset that we have going into Alberta, which was really our one of our stepping stone assets into the licensed producer market in Canada, is a company called Acreage Farms, which Invictus owns 100% of. Acreage Farms is located about 2 hours west of Edmonton on 150 acres, so definitely a big land platform there. It currently has a 7,000 square foot facility. That 7,000 square foot facility can produce about 800 kilograms of cannabis per annum of dry product. And it actually is working on an expansion facility right now of 32,000 square feet. So by January 2018, the facility in total will be on a run rate of 5,000 kilograms per annum, which is perfect in terms of what I mentioned earlier, with the Canadian government going to allow recreational use by mid of next year. We're going to be in a position in Acreage Farms which we can provide the shortage that is expected as a result of the recreational use. Now, in terms of going more to the east, we also have an asset in Ontario called AB Laboratories. That is another licensed producer under the ACMPR in Canada, so under Health Canada regime. That facility has about 16,000 square foot building right now. It can produce around 1,000 kilograms per annum, and there's some expansion abilities there as well. In addition, right near the property, we actually purchased another property, another 150 acres in Ontario, with the expectation that that will be licensed very quickly under the same ACMPR guidelines to be licensed in Canada. And all these licenses that we own across the country, good land platform as well as good positioning in the provinces, really gives us that ability to be a first mover. Right now, the licensed producers in Canada, there's about 62 of them and more coming online on a regular basis. But there's not too many that are going to be able to capture the actual supply shortage that will occur as soon as we actually go recreationally legal.
Could you talk a little bit about your team and how you differentiate yourselves from others?
Absolutely. So our team is basically comprised of individuals in the industry in terms of cultivation experience. So our growers have come from other licensed producers. Our growers have also been in the system for a number of years. Canada has been actually legal medicinally for over 10 years now. That's something that a lot of the other countries are unaware of. We were kind of the leading edge country to actually legalize across the country, federally legal. So we've got growers that have experience. And then from the corporate development side and communication side, we have an individual, Larry Heinzelmeyer, who's our VP of Communications and Marketing. Him and I were instrumental in building one of Canada's largest for-profit education companies. So we definitely know what it's like for marketing cost, and in that case it was student acquisition, and in this case it's patient acquisition until we go recreational. And then myself, my background, I'm a CPA by trade, so cash flow is very much top of mind at all times. Something that was brainwashed into me at a very young age. So I look at everything from the top line all the way in the middle and all the way to the bottom line. So we definitely ensure that we raise the proper capital at efficient amounts and that we pretty much put it to good use. Right now we've raised approximately $60 million in the last 8 months, and we have about $27 million in cash. So that's kind of an example of utilizing efficient capital, as well as we have a great director team One of our directors is ex-Big Tobacco, George Fetton. He resides in Switzerland. He was JTI and Philip Morris background, so definitely understands on the M&A side opportunities. And we have Paul Sparks, who is in Ontario and has provided various different government support in his previous experience. We have Aaron Bowden, who's a CPA by trade, also working in a large corporation in their tax department, so he provides information for the audit committee, etc. And we have Joe Hawker, who is a lawyer out of Alberta, so definitely from a governance perspective, we have that covered. And then we have Trevor Dixon, who is one of the individual founders of Acreage Farms. So when we acquired Acreage Farms, he came on the board. So definitely a wide array of individuals. We're definitely, in terms of getting in with the government to make sure that we understand what's happening within each province and make sure that we're ready as a federal licensed producer to be able to supply those provinces when it comes to recreational.
Could you describe the upcoming catalysts that will be crucial to Invictus's long-term business strategy?
Absolutely. So we've got cultivation licenses only in our 2 facilities in Alberta and in Ontario. So one of the major catalysts that happens within the Canadian landscape from a regulatory perspective is basically getting your sales license. So because we received our licenses fairly recently, we have to cultivate first, then you get your product tested by Health Canada. And then once your product has been approved by Health Canada, they provide a sales license. And at that point, you can actually sell to the general public. At this stage, under the medicinal regime, the public have to provide you with a medical document, which is from a general practitioner, and then they can get product through the mail. As we go more into the recreational side, a lot of provinces are talking about doing a tiered system where there's a wholesale model into a government distribution board, and that then goes over to whether it's going to be privatized or run by the government in terms of individual stores. But definitely the catalyst for us is going to be getting our sales license, and we expect that to happen in the final quarter of this year and the first quarter of next year for the assets that we have. So that's something that is definitely going to put us more in competitive valuation metrics as our peers.
Now, based on our research, Invictus Stock, which is trading on the TSX Venture under ticker symbol IMH, is relatively undervalued compared to its peers in the industry. Why do you think this is the case?
Well, part of it is what we were just talking about in terms of having our sales license. So I think once we get the sales license, I think that there's going to be a shift in the market. It's a good time, obviously, to get in now because we're working towards that, and it's something that the Canadian government is in the forefront of their minds right now because of the shortage that's happening on the medicinal side and the shortage that they expect when we go recreational. If you look at what we can, in terms of our cash, I mentioned we have $27 million in the bank. And one of the main metrics that a lot of the analysts in the space are looking at, and there's a lot of analyst coverage right now, is what's called funded capacity. And funded capacity is basically how much cash do you have in your treasury and how many square feet can you build out between the various different licenses. So we have 250 acres. We can build out significant square footage, as many square feet as we really want at this point. But based on what we have in terms of the bank and prior to actually having to go raise any additional capital, we have about 15,000 kilos of funded capacity. And if that was comparable in the markets, if you looked at a report like an Echelon Wealth report, who is an analyst that actually provided us with the speculative buy rating at $2, and we're trading around $1.20. But you can definitely see in those type of reports that compared to our peers, that we're lagging behind in terms of value. But I think as we get into the sales license, as I mentioned, and we're selling product and people are more confident that on a go-forward basis, our various different facilities are producing quality product, there'll be a shift in value for sure.
So, how can investors get involved in Invictus MD? And how can they contact you for more information as well as on social media?
Yeah, so our website, if we welcome any subscribers to come to the website, www.invictus-md.com, or by all means, anybody can contact me directly at dan.kriznic@invictus-md.com. So definitely we're welcome to receiving any kind of inquiries, whether it's from shareholders or prospective shareholders. And then we do have a Twitter account at Invictus_MD and a Facebook account at Invictus MD.
Gotcha. So Once again, the ticker symbol on the TSX Venture is IMH. The website is invictus-md.com. There's also an About Us page, so if you go to invictus-md.com/about-us, you can learn more about the company as well. And if you'd like to speak with or communicate with the company, feel free to email dan.kriznic, Kriznic, at invictus-md.com. All of this will be in the description of this video. I'm excited about this opportunity. I think that personally, this is an undervalued stock and a definite opportunity for investors. So Mr. Dan Kriznic, thank you for informing me today about Invictus MD, and you are welcome back anytime on Looking at the Markets.
Great. Thank you for having me.